Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we have some really exciting stuff coming up this week. On Friday, you have to join us at MSU Denver. That's Metropolitan State University, Denver. We are having a roundtable discussion of sorts. We'll have some keynote speakers there, but we're talking Colorado Compact and immigration modernization. So we have exciting stuff. Senator Michael Bennet will be there. We also have Hikmet Ersek, who is the CEO of Western Union, joining us as well. But we're going to talk specifically about what Colorado Compact is, and joining us is one of our partners. We have by Skype, Hanna Siegel. She is the managing partner for New American Economy. So welcome, Hanna. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Alex. I'm excited to be here and really excited for the event on Friday.
Awesome. We are pumped too. So thank you for taking some time out to talk with our audience about this. But I do have two other people in the room that I need to introduce. Jeff Wasden, who you might recognize, Colorado Business Roundtable President, and pusher of all things immigration reform. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing awesome. It's great to be here, and we're so excited about this upcoming event. You mentioned, obviously, Hikmet Ersek, one of our great CEOs of the Business Roundtable, headquartered here in Colorado, who will be there, and Senator Bennet. We also know that Senator Gardner and Attorney General for Weiser and many others will be there. We've got an incredible panel lined up. It's a great opportunity for us to really bring forward and relaunch the Colorado Compact that was done so much earlier, and talk about where we are today. And that's an exciting time for us, exciting time to have NAE so heavily involved with us and the support that they provide and bring nationally to this effort. We're just excited to revisit this and see what we can do this time.
Oh, absolutely. I know it's a contentious issue, but we're trying to solve it nonetheless. And I also have Joy Athanasiou with us. She is she is the Colorado Compact arm here, and as well as in training immigration attorneys. So you've got that under your belt. You know what you're talking about at the very least. How are you doing, Joy?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you. Very exciting stuff.
Yes.
But what I would like to do here, and we will get back to Colorado Compact, but I want to take a national look here at immigration reform and where we're at with that. I know, as I said, it is a contentious issue. It's something that we keep seeing politically. It's a huge impact on the business community if we don't get something down to reform the current immigration laws that we have in place. So Hanna, I want to start with you. Tell me about New American Economy and this overview of immigration as we see it right now.
Yeah. So as Alex said, my name is Hanna Siegel. I'm the managing director at an organization called New American Economy. That is a bipartisan research and advocacy organization. We have members in all 50 states, across industries, across political parties, dedicated to smarter immigration reform at all levels. And, immigration, like Alex alluded to, is something that we all hear about every single day. But we've essentially made no progress changing our system in the past 50 years. The immigration system that we are operating under right now was largely formed in 1965. And so if you think about that, if you think about how different the world looked in 1965, it's not surprising to see that, that isn't a system that works for today. And so New American Economy was formed in 2010 with this theory of change that if you make the economic case for immigration, you can bring both sides to the table. And, immigration historically and today has really been a base issue, which means you have the far left yelling at the far right. So, you have one side that talks a lot about the plight of the undocumented. You have the other side that talks a lot about amnesty and law and order. Those are really important conversations in the immigration discussion, but they don't tell the whole story. And a big piece of the story that doesn't address is the economics behind immigration and the idea that businesses in the United States really depend on immigrant talent alongside American talent to grow and thrive. And so New American Economy was formed to try and make that case, build the middle, and put together this coalition that could pave the way for change. So we do a few different things to try and move the ball forward. The first is research. We have a think tank. So we produce a lot of original research, just trying to put some numbers to the arguments. How many immigrants are in, a state or a city? How many jobs are they creating? And so let's take Colorado, for example. There are about 554,000 immigrants in Colorado, a little bit more, 500,000 immigrants. That's 9.9% of the population in the state. And Colorado has almost 40,000 immigrant entrepreneurs. So if you think about something like job creation, jobs come from new businesses, by and large. And so, 40,000 immigrant entrepreneurs, these are people starting businesses, employing more than 100,000 Coloradoans. That's a lot of jobs. That's a real economic impact. Colorado immigrants are also more likely to be of working age. If you think about how the demographics of this country are changing, you have the largest generation, the baby boomer generation, that is aging out of the workforce into retirement. That means that we have workforce gaps. It also means that our healthcare needs are changing. And immigrants help on both of those fronts. So on the age front, immigrants are more likely to be of working age. They are between 16 and 64, way more so than Americans. And so they're ready and willing to enter the workforce and fill those gaps. Also on the healthcare front, immigrants are more likely to be doctors and surgeons. They're also more likely to be home health aides. These are two professions that are sort of at different ends of the healthcare spectrum that as the baby boomer generation ages, we are going to need more and more of. And labor shortages, and I'm sure that Jeff can speak to this, labor shortages are a big deal in the business community. And figuring out how to welcome immigrant talent from around the world that can help fill those shortages, that's a big piece of modernizing our immigration system. So we have a lot of original research at NAE that we try to use to advocate for the issue. We also tell stories. We all know that, numbers don't change minds alone. It's really stories that change minds. And so we look for, folks, there's like Jeff, who's the ideal partner, who has a huge organization of people that can speak to this issue directly. But we look for stories across the board in all 50 states. We publish them in local newspapers. We use them in campaigns. We produce videos. We bring those people and those stories to Capitol Hill and to local lawmakers and say, this is what this issue looks like on the ground. This is what it means to have an immigration system from 1965 operating today. And this is why it doesn't work. So the stories are a huge piece of that. And then we do a lot of advocacy work legislatively. So, we work with governors and mayors across the country to think about policies and programs that can welcome and successfully integrate immigrants so that everybody benefits. How do you make sure that immigrant entrepreneurs have the language resources to build businesses that are successful? For example, how do you try and get an Office of New Americans as a part of every city administration and state administration so that there is somebody dedicated to working with local stakeholders and thinking about how everybody can work together successfully? And then, of course, sort of the elephant in the room, the national discussion on immigration. How do we get a better immigration system writ large? And that is largely going to come from DC. And, as we know, the immigration debate has only heated up over the past few years. So I spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C., meeting with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, talking to them about this issue, and ultimately trying to get a huge systemic overhaul. I mean, we need a new immigration system across the board. We need a plan for the undocumented immigrants who are here. We need border security that people feel good about and that works. And we need a modern immigration system so that we can attract and retain the immigrants that our businesses need to grow and to thrive. So we do a lot of work in that space. And our state and local work, things like the Colorado Compact that we're going to talk about later, are about bringing together coalitions at the state level, people who really understand how this issue affects that community, the Colorado community, to make progress on the ground, but then bring that progress to DC. Whenever I go to Washington, the members of Congress ask me, what do my voters think? How does this impact my community directly? The national debate, that's sort of a separate thing in some ways. It's a very, I don't mean to say that it isn't impactful. It obviously is. But members of Congress, if they're going to act on this issue, which, is scary politically for members of both parties, they want to know that it's something that their constituents want. And so the Colorado Compact is so important for providing that kind of support. And so that's why we're here today, and that's what we think about at New American Economy.
Awesome. I really appreciate your input there. Thank you very much for painting that national picture for us. And I want to get a little bit more local. So I'm going to turn to Jeff here to talk about what we're doing here in Colorado. We'll definitely get into Colorado Compact itself, but overall in Colorado, legislatively speaking, where are we at?
I think Hanna did a great job really outlining where we are and the need for modernization of immigration reform and this problem of a 50 to 60-year-old situation that we've created without updating visa cap systems, without really addressing our broken legal immigration system, without fixing that magnet to illegal employment. And it's created a situation that continues to drive a political divisiveness in D.C., and it makes it, as Hanna mentioned, hard for members of Congress to address this. I think we approach this first and foremost. This is a federal issue. It is very important that we recognize that this is something that we're asking our congressional delegation to take action. We firmly believe that there is a path forward, that we have answers, that immigration reform is not as complex as people have made it, that there are some very basic economic reasons to fix immigration. And I think it really starts with an understanding and appreciation that immigrants are part of our community, that they're part of our fabric, and that we need a policy that reflects not only our values as Coloradans and as Americans, but certainly the contributions, because immigrants have played a critical role in our fabric and the business community moving forward. This is really, as we start to look at why the Colorado Business Roundtable has been so heavily involved in immigration and certainly involved in this Colorado Compact and partnering with our friends in D.C. at NAE. This is an area that we understand business needs access to human capital. We need the best. We need the brightest. That access to talent, the diversity of thought, the impacts that have been brought to our forefronts to help drive our economy forward, to innovate, to compete. And that is really the driving force from what we hear every day from our employers, the companies of the Business Roundtable, large and small, that are looking for human capital. As Hanna mentioned, you're looking at record low unemployment numbers, the labor pressures that are on these companies to find that talent, but more importantly to compete globally, which is really the companies of the Business Roundtables. They're Fortune by nature, which means they're global and they have to operate on that global stage. So we're really looking at things that really strengthen our economy, that really address these kinds of issues, that ensure our values, that drive that talent, and bringing the Colorado Compact back forward and continuing this conversation was the perfect vehicle for us to kind of focus our efforts, because there's a lot of people that want to see things happen. This really gives us an opportunity to put an anchor, to build something to all focus in on, that's very thoughtful, that's very, I think, centrist by nature, that will help bring people from all parties in our congressional delegation, that they can get their arms behind and say, this is pragmatic, it's thoughtful, it's doable, it makes sense, it protects our nation, our security, and puts that as an important issue, because that does matter, and we do need to know who's here and who's in our country, but it also drives the kind of workforce to our companies that we need to continue to move forward. So we're excited to be here, we're excited to be a part of this, we're excited to partner with NAA and so many great coalition members, and Joy, who's really been on the ground helping us build that coalition here in Colorado.
Yeah, so Joy, tell me a little bit about how the building of this coalition is going for you.
Well, it's going fantastic, Alex.
Wonderful.
And just to give you a little background, I practiced immigration law for about 17 years and then transitioned more into policy and politics, seeing firsthand. Yes, why, exactly. And made that transition over time, first meeting with some of our congressional delegation and then taking on more and more roles, because I was witnessing, like so many in our immigration legal community, firsthand how our system wasn't working. And wasn't working for employers, wasn't working for family members. And as Hanna alluded to, we have this system from 1965. And people talk about, oh, we need to modernize it. But until you see how it works, or in most cases how it doesn't work, in real life, you don't get, okay, here's what we need, here's what we don't need. One of the things that we see on a regular basis, whether it is a research scientist at CU, or a rural physician in La Junta, Colorado, or a marble quarry in Longmont or on the Western Slope, or our dairy industry in northeastern Colorado. All of these critical industries can't get the workers they need under our current system. Or if there is a way to get those workers, such as the research scientist at CU, the process is so complex and so difficult to navigate that oftentimes they can't keep those scientists that we critically need. But we have this scenario on the ground that has been building up for decades. And finally, coming together with the compact in 2012, there was a movement among the business community and among a few of our elected leaders to bring together voices from all parts of the debate, like Jeff was mentioning, and also from all industries in Colorado that really have a difficult time keeping and retaining a workforce. And with that movement, it was kind of a little bit of an organic movement to just come around around a set of principles for immigration reform that we can all work on. And that came together in 2012. It was a beautiful event. There were well over 100 signatories. And so fast forward to today, obviously there was hope between 2012 and today that Congress would tackle this issue and finally fix our system, and we all know that hasn't happened. So here we are, fast forward to 2019, and all of those businesses and industries that were suffering 2012, the situation has become critical. Our unemployment has now reached a net zero, even negative in some of our mountain areas. Colorado has become the largest user of H-2B visas in the country. And for our listeners, H-2B visa means a seasonal worker. Seasonal workers in the resort communities, seasonal workers in landscaping, so other types of seasonal positions. But yes, Colorado is overtaken now as the national leader in H-2B visas, and that's still incredibly insufficient for our needs. We also have a huge gap, and this is one of the biggest gaps that has existed since the beginning of our immigration system. We don't have a visa for year-round workers without a college degree. So you're looking at all of our construction industries, our restaurants, our hotel housekeepers, the dairy industry that I mentioned earlier. We have never had a visa for that workforce. And that's a workforce that Colorado is desperately in need of today. And so, fast forwarding to the compact, we have had a tremendous success because all of these industries are facing such a critical need. It's a no-brainer. We have to do something. We have to come together as a business community and push Congress to finally fix the system. So we've had a fantastic time, Jeff and I and a few other folks, going back to the original signers from 2012 and talking to industries today and getting everybody to come back together, coalesce around the compact, and really push Congress to finally fix it.
It's really been an easy sell, just to jump in, because I think, as you mentioned, the need and the demand is so critical, and people are feeling those pressures, and thought really that the path forward in 2012 was such an easy policy discussion to have. When you sit back and you look at the tenets that are built into the actual compact, when you start talking about federal responsibility, strengthen our economy, the national security, families, enforcement, these are things that most people understand, agree on in a very bipartisan fashion, can come to the table. So as we started to talk about this, Joy, you mentioned one thing, and I think it's very important, I think, for our listeners to understand, and that's really the diverse nature of this issue and problem, because I think there's a misperception or conception that this is really a low-skilled worker issue. But you start mentioning the tech industry, the financial service industry, the aerospace industry, things that are so important here in Colorado, and the needs that those industries have within the immigrant community, and again, bringing in the best, the brightest. We talk about some of our Colorado's great educational institutions. When we're educating some of our youth that are clearly identified as really that next generation that's going to continue to drive not only our economy but create the kind of solutions to world problems that we're all looking for. But we can't keep that talent here. We can't continue to retain those, to use those within the very institutions and companies that are training them. They end up going back abroad overseas. They end up competing against Colorado companies, U.S. companies, and we want to be able to keep those people, employ them, put them to work, really benefit from those contributions and diversity of thought and ideas and structures, and again, continue to compete, innovate, grow, and help the Colorado economy move forward. And that's why I think this focus on the economic reasons for immigration reform that Hanna so clearly mentioned earlier are really the reasons why the business community has really rallied behind this.
Yes, Jeff, and I would like to add on to a point that you were mentioning about individuals that come here to study and to learn and then take that knowledge back to their countries. You know, another part of this discussion is looking at all of our academic community. And a lot of our academic community has already signed on to the compact, and most of our university presidents in Colorado are signing on.
Great point, Joy.
And a big part of that is there's been a significant drop in international students registering at our state colleges. And this is important because those international students help drive that innovation that you were talking about, help drive whether it's in the science fields or the engineering fields or the computer technology fields. We need those students. We need the thinkers, and it's a combination of doing both. There's not an either or. People think either we have immigrants or we have citizens. No, it's a both. We need each other. We need our young people to learn and go forward more in the STEM areas, in the science and the technology and math. But we also need to supplement in certain sectors of our economy with immigrants where we don't have enough U.S. citizens in those sectors, whether it's at the very top of our economy or at the very bottom or in a lot of specialty fields in between. So this is an effort, and it's interesting, in bringing up the academic community. Our compact kickoff this Friday is going to be at Metro State University. It's our state universities that are trying to ring the alarm bells just as much as our industries, saying, hey, the immigration system isn't working. We need these students. We need them to be able to stay here and work. We need to incorporate them into our economy.
I was just going to say, to add to the higher ed argument, I mean, it really is a powerful one. And it's crazy because we've invested so much into building the best education system in the world. And that system attracts the best and the brightest from all over the world. It does what we built it to do. But it's not only that, you as a student often graduate and go home. You can't even pursue a green card while you are a student. You cannot say, I want to go to school here and I want to stay here. You can't do that at the same time. And so for so many students, they end up graduating, taking their education back home to compete, not because that's what they want, but because there is no other choice. There's no other option. So actually, there's a new group that's just formed based in DC that includes some Colorado universities, I'm almost sure, called the President's Alliance for Immigration Reform. And this is a bunch of college and university presidents from around the country that got together about a year ago and said, we need to form an organization that is specifically about higher ed and immigration. So this is something that universities and colleges have been talking to each other about. As Joy mentioned, there's been a huge drop in international students. And that has, real sort of idea and innovation impact, but also financial impact. International students pay full tuition, and that helps support these colleges and universities. And so they've actually gotten together to form a group that is permanently talking about this in DC from the Colorado perspective and others.
That's fantastic, and great points. We're so excited. I'm excited to hear the rest of your conversation as you guys continue to have this conversation, the second half of this show. But more importantly, just excited to continue not only the event, which I think is very important. I think it's great to put a great public face on where we are and what we're doing and bringing this forward in a more public manner, but really the ongoing work that will continue beyond that as we continue to try and drive for responsible, pragmatic immigration reform.
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. And we are losing you in the second half, but stick with us. We're still going to talk with Joy and Hannah some more about immigration reform, the importance of it. And in the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. Visit COBRT.com/events. Click on the 28th. Go ahead and sign up for that Colorado Compact event that we're having this Friday again at MSU Denver, Metropolitan State University, Denver. Looking forward to it. We'll be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are talking immigration modernization. This is a conversation that I think has taken place a lot around the states. It's definitely a contentious issue, as we mentioned in the last segment. But I have two people joining me today to talk specifically about a new coalition. Well, not a new coalition, a coalition that was formed in 2012, and we're revamping because our business people here in Colorado are, it's a critical need now that we need this immigration reform. And so I have in studio joining me Joy Athanasiou, and she is with Colorado Compact. And I also have joining me by Skype Hanna Siegel. She is the Managing Director for New American Economy, or NAE, as we have lovingly called it. So thank you both again for sticking with me. We lost Jeff from the first segment. But we know that we have an event coming up on June 28th, and it is the Colorado Compact event. It's taking place at MSU Metropolitan State University, Denver. Again, you can find out more information in the description below, so be sure to click on that link. You can sign up. You can sign up with NAE or Colorado Compact to be an ally with this movement as well. But let's talk a little bit more about this June 28th Friday event.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's all based around the Colorado Compact on Immigration, which we mentioned earlier, had started in 2012 and had a lot of members of the business community and chambers and industry associations, as well as academic heads, faith leaders, law enforcement leaders, and elected officials from all over Colorado that just came together to sign on to a basic set of principles for immigration reform that we could give to Congress and say, look, everybody can agree to this. Whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal, whether you're not political at all, we just need Congress to fix the system. We need a modern system. We need something that works for businesses. We need something that works for families. We need something that works for academia. We need something that works for our communities. So they came together around the compact fast and hoping at that point that Congress would go ahead and pass immigration reform. And of course, we all know that didn't happen. So here we are again, 6 years later, 2019, and it's reached such a critical need for businesses that the business community is saying, what can we do? What can we do to get Congress to finally work on this? So we came back together around the compact, and we're so excited about it. We have, the vast majority of our original signatories. We're adding new signatories, and we're going to have a big kickoff event on Friday at Metro. And what we're asking of all of our listeners and anybody interested in this issue is come to the event, or if you can't come to the event, we just want you to sign on to the compact. The compact is simply that set of principles. Just add your name to it and say, yes, I can support common sense immigration reform. I can get on board and say, Congress, you need to fix this system and modernize our system. So, of course, we'd love to have you at the event. We do have just a spectacular group of people coming and speaking. We have Hikmet Ersek, from Western Union is going to come and be our keynote speaker. We have Senator Cory Gardner is coming. Senator Michael Bennett is tentatively scheduled to come, even though he's going to be on the debates the night before. He is trying to fly in Friday morning just to make our event. We have our Attorney General, Phil Weiser, will be there, and Jeff Wasden from the Business Roundtable is going to moderate a fantastic panel of industry representatives, which includes Kelly Braw from the Denver Metro Chamber, includes Hanna Siegel, our Managing Director of New American Economy that's here with us today. We have the President of the Colorado Farm Bureau, Don Shawcroft, and the final person is Ted Leidy from the Colorado Association of Home Builders, and the panel is going to talk about all this intersection of industries and unemployment and economic need and how immigration fits into that and why we need immigration reform to make our economy go forward in the future. So it's hosted by Janine Davidson, the president of Metro State University. So it's really shaping up to be a fantastic event.
Yeah, I mean, Joy just named all different kinds of people from all different industries, from academia, from all different pieces of the Colorado community. And I think, a really important piece of this initiative is the diversity of people that are coming together around immigration. I think if you listen to the national discussion on immigration, you would not think that anybody agrees. This is heated rhetoric from two extreme sides often. When actually, and polling shows this, actually most Americans understand that we need a better immigration system. We need an immigration system that works for our communities, that works for families, that works for business. And that's often what you hear when you really go and talk to people, but that isn't reflected in the national debate. And that's something that we're trying to change with initiatives like the Colorado Compact. So, Joy mentioned that we are slated to have both Senator Gardner and Senator Bennett at this event. It is not that common to get a Democrat and a Republican from Washington together at one event, much less around immigration. Like, that alone is sort of the epitome of what we're trying to do. Both of these lawmakers understand how critical this issue is for Colorado and for the nation. Both of them, I mean, these are busy guys, and they're on opposite sides of Congress right now. They are. But both of their offices have been excited about this. They're excited to come together. I mean, this really is a bipartisan initiative around an issue that actually has a lot of bipartisan support around the country, but it's just not framed that way in the national debate. And that's counterproductive because everybody of all political stripes needs a better immigration system that really works for them. And so that's something that we're just very proud of and we're very excited about. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the impact of something like this. Like, a statement of principles is great. It is very important to get all different kinds of people to come together and say, we need this. And it's something very clear and tangible that you can deliver to Congress. But what does it actually do? And what are we hoping for? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of these compacts. Colorado was one of the leaders. Senator Bennett led this initiative in 2012. But it's not the first state to have actually done something. Utah in 2010 was actually the first state compact around immigration with the same idea in mind. We have so many different kinds of people across industries, across urban and rural areas, across political ideologies in the state of Utah who wanted a better immigration system. And in 2010, it was gearing up for what eventually was the fight around comprehensive immigration reform in 2013. And so both Utah and Colorado successfully brought together different business leaders in the state to make this grand statement. And it really was a huge piece of getting the Senate's comprehensive immigration reform bill passed. Now, as Alex mentioned, it didn't actually become law. A big, long, political story about how it died in the House. But the 2013 Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill was the biggest piece of immigration legislation in the last 50 years. I mean, that is, or one of the biggest, but that is the closest that we have come in recent history to really reforming our immigration system. We need to do better. We need to actually, have Congress pass something into law. But the Colorado Compact and the Utah Compact gave those lawmakers the political ammo and the support that they needed to help get that bill passed. And so that's what we're thinking about when we think about what kind of impact can something like this actually have.
I love hearing that. And to reiterate, again, this is something that we need to modernize. We've said it several times. 1965 was the last time we had anything in the books as far as immigration law is concerned. I know that there is a law in Kentucky where you can't carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket. That's still on the books to this day. Is it necessary to have that? No, that's something we should modernize, right? That's not something that should be an issue at all. I think along those same lines, there are certain things technologically speaking, from 1965, imagine all the changes that we've made. Obviously, that's going to have an impact on everything, including immigration, right? The easier we make things, the more modern they become, the more changes we need. And so one of those things, you mentioned common sense immigration reform.
Yes.
Right? And so I think a lot of people, because the national message right now is that you should be divided on immigration, when simply speaking, all we need is a modernization, right? There are other impacts, right? I'm not going to get into the wall with you guys because it's not where this stands. But that being said, let's talk about what common sense means as far as the Colorado Compact is concerned.
Sure. We can talk about that. So common sense means we look at what's broken and we fix it. Now, this is a funny conversation that we've had in the past. You know, having a background as an immigration attorney and talking to other immigration attorneys, we've joked about the fact that we could probably fix this system in about 2 hours. We know what doesn't work. We know what does work. We could just change the statute here, fix this provision over here, boom, it's done. And so the logic would be just take and look at the system and fix what's broken. Unfortunately, you get politics into the mix, and all of a sudden it becomes a lot bigger than that. But, when you're talking about common sense immigration reform, you're talking about taking, as you mentioned, the system has not really changed since 1965. We've had other laws that have been passed over the years, but those are mostly restrictions. And we're going to restrict this. We're going to increase our enforcement. We're going to try to do more employer-based enforcement. We're going to impose more rules on the people coming. But the actual changing and improving the system to reflect our changes in our society and our demographics, that's what hasn't happened. So when you talk about common sense reform, you talk about, okay, everybody knows that we need to have a secure border. Okay, that goes without saying.
Right.
But we also need to have a system that addresses our workers. We need visas for low-skilled workers. We need visas for high-skilled workers. And we need the visas that we already have need to be more flexible to our needs. And in many cases, we just need to have more of them, right? We also need to have a system that makes sense for families. Families right now, and you'll hear a lot of talk, in the media and on the news about chain migration and different things. A lot of that is a big exaggeration. We have a family-based system that has been in place, and that part started in 1952 and then again in 1965, where U.S. citizens can sponsor our close family members, our spouses, our parents, our children, and our siblings. And permanent residents can have their spouse and children with them. Unfortunately, in most of those categories, we have a waiting list that could be 10 years, could be 20 years, could be 30 years. So we have people sitting here waiting that filed a petition and started the process in 1995 and still can't get a visa or still can't get their status. So it's fixing that and updating those visa backlogs. We also have those same visa backlogs on the employment-based system. So especially for certain countries, if you're from India and you're waiting in the employment-based visa backlog, you could be waiting another 40 years. So it's crazy when you look at actually what the system is now and what it needs to be. And on the other part, too, we have this giant elephant in the room. What do we do with the undocumented? Who are the undocumented? What do we do with the undocumented? In reality, most of them have lived here for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. They are family. The overwhelming majority are family members of U.S. citizens. They are key employees for employers throughout Colorado and throughout our economy. There is no other alternative than providing some path of legalization for undocumented. It would be economic suicide to try to deport all of them and then turn around and import new workers for those same positions. It just wouldn't work. It would shut down our dairy industry, it would shut down our tourism industry, and it would shut down so many other critical industries. It's just not practical. We need a path forward for the undocumented.
So you keep saying undocumented, and I want to take a step back here. I think everyone kind of has a rough idea what you mean, but it's gotten so diluted.
Yes,
when you watch media. So if you don't mind taking a step back here and just explaining what documented versus undocumented means.
So documented is somebody who has papers,
right?
And that
includes visas.
That includes visas. It's some type of lawful status, whether it's permanent resident status or some type of temporary lawful status like a student or an employment-based visa or some type of humanitarian status. So any kind of papers. Undocumented, in most cases, are people who don't have status, okay? There are a few situations where people have status and can't get documentation. But most of the time it's people who don't have status, but either they came to the U.S. without a visa initially, or they came with a visa and at some point it expired. They may have tried to follow the law. In fact, almost all of them have tried to follow the law, and either they're in that petition system that I mentioned, where somebody filed a petition 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and they're waiting and waiting and waiting for lawful status, or they may not be eligible to get into the system at all. So for a large part of our community, either they had status at one time and there was no way to extend it, or they never had status and there's no way to ever get status, or they never had status but they're in that waiting list. So it's a huge group of people, so you can't just put them into one little box.
Exactly. So I appreciate that. Go ahead.
One thing I would add, I mean, Joy did a great job. I think there's this myth of the line, like they should get in line. I mean, there really isn't a line for these people who are here. Deporting, 11 million undocumented immigrants is not administratively, logistically possible. But also, for the most part, these are members of our economy, of our community, of our families, of our churches, of our businesses, across the board, community members. And that's part of reform. I mean, reform is a solution for the undocumented population. It's a border that is secure, that works. We know who's coming and going. And it's legalizing the legal immigration system so that businesses can get the workers they need to grow and thrive. I mean, just to add a couple other examples to what Joy pointed out, we don't have a visa if you want to come and start a business here. If you want to come and open up a business, there is no way for you to come through that path. You have to come some other way, which is crazy. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, new businesses create jobs. If you want to start a business here in the U.S., I know there's a guy named PJ out in San Francisco who we worked with on a campaign. He was a Stanford business school student. He started a business in business school with another student who actually also happened to be an immigrant. And when they graduated, they were trying to figure out a way to stay. And they couldn't apply to the government and say, we're starting a business, we have capital, we have an idea, we have a plan, we're going to create jobs, we want to stay. They had to figure out how to get a sponsor. And so what PJ ended up having to do was give up the majority share of his own company so that somebody who was here as an American could sponsor him. I mean, he was trying to figure out all these different ways that he could stay and grow his successful business. They ended up figuring it out, but only after insane complications and, getting lucky, basically. I mean, his partner, his co-founder, was applying for something called an O1 visa, which is a visa for extraordinary ability. It is sort of a small category. There's no cap. It's not clear what would get you this visa, but one of the listed qualifications as something that could get you this visa is if you're a Nobel laureate. I mean, that is not a reasonable path for most people. Like, it's sort of like Joy said with the, 20, 30, 40-year waits. There is, I think Joy was talking about a specific law that places a cap on employment visas from certain countries, which means that there are aspiring immigrants from India who theoretically have a wait time of, I'm not kidding, 119 years
Yes.
to get here. I mean, it's not a real system. These aren't real paths to get the people that we need and that we want to help us grow and thrive. And of course, to state the obvious, America was built on immigrants. We are successful entirely because we are a nation of immigrants. This is not, generosity with no benefit to our communities and to our economies. And so part of going back to the Colorado Compact, part of the American economy is trying to bring people together in a bipartisan way, coming at this issue from all different angles, whether you are the head of a university or a dairy farmer. We need a system that works for you.
Absolutely. Preach, sister. You're telling me. I agree with you guys. This is pretty common sense, right?
Yes.
We need this reform regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. Again, this is a bipartisan issue. It impacts everybody. And I like what you said. There is no line to get into, right? That's part of this reform.
Or they're in the line.
Or they're right.
That's the silly part. Either they can't get in the line, or they've been kicked out of the line, or they're in the line.
Yeah.
So there isn't one clear answer there.
Which is why you should definitely get involved. So actually, I'm going to ask here with you, Hanna. We have the Colorado Compact. You mentioned that Utah had a coalition as well. How can business owners and workers get involved with New American Economy or starting their own coalition?
No, it's a great question. Thank you for asking. So, New American Economy, we have members and supporters. Our networks span all 50 states across industries, Democrats, Republicans. We work with elected officials. We work with faith leaders, agriculture leaders, tech leaders, cultural leaders, entertainers. We want this tent to be as big as possible. So as an individual, go to newamericaneconomy.org, sign up to get updates from us, and reach out. If you have a story to tell, whether you're an immigrant or a native born American, you have a perspective on this issue, get in touch, because telling your story through your local paper, through your local broadcast station, through one of our campaigns is one of the best ways to get involved. Also, calling your member of Congress. That's part of why the Colorado Compact is so important. Members of Congress, and I'm there every week, care about who is calling them. And they're old school. They like phone calls. They talk about who is calling their office and what they are talking about every day. And let me tell you, the people who are anti-immigrant and anti-immigration reform, they are a small group, but they are organized and they are vocal and they're making those phone calls. And so it's really, really important that we have a counterweight to that and that we show that the majority of our communities understand immigration is a good thing. Immigration reform benefits all of us. And so reaching out to your member of Congress or your elected official locally is really important, and we can help you do that. So get in touch. From the Colorado standpoint, the Colorado Compact is really important. We've launched this year a few different compacts. The first one we did was in Texas, and that coalition of signers has grown over these past 6 months, and they are making a difference. Texas actually, there was an attempt to repeal the Texas DREAM Act, which would give in-state tuition to undocumented immigrants. Not only the right thing to do, but has huge positive economic consequences for the state. And this group said, no, we do not want this law repealed. This is an important piece of, what we do here in Texas and what we're all about. It's also economically beneficial. And so they launched a campaign as a coalition to keep that from happening. And they did it. They were a huge part of keeping that law from being repealed. So state by state, there are ways that coalitions like the one forming around the Colorado Compact can take action. There was also a bill to protect dreamers and TPS holders that just passed the U.S. House in D.C. That's something that a lot of our state coalitions, made noise on. They wrote letters to their representatives, they called, they took a stand, they did public events, and it passed. And those kinds of things are really important. So I really encourage Colorado community members to get involved with New American Economy individually, but also with the compact itself. And I think, Alex, you said that you're going to have that on your site.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Hanna. I appreciate that. So real quick, tell me how I can get more involved with Colorado Compact. Again, we'll have those links available. But yeah.
Of course. Getting involved with the Colorado Compact could not be easier. All we ask you to do is sign on. Just put your name on it and say, I support this. If you want to do more than that, of course, we'll take more than that. Come to our event on Friday. We're also hoping to launch a very vibrant and systemic business coalition from the compact. And then the members of the business coalition would do more in the way of direct advocacy, meeting with Congress, keeping the pressure on Congress, raising their voices, doing op-eds or, letters to the editor. So many different ways that people can become involved. But the easiest thing to do is simply go on and sign on and say, I support the compact.
Awesome.
And the one thing that I forgot to add is, New American Economy, we want you to be informed. We want you to go into this argument ready with facts, because this is a very emotional issue. This is a political issue, and often that isn't the way forward, at least not by itself. So if you go to maptheimpact.org, that is where a lot of our research is housed. And if you go, you'll see it's a big map of the United States. You can type in your address or your city or your state or your industry, and you can see exactly how immigrants are contributing. So that when you are talking about this issue to your friends, to your employees, to your coworkers, to your member of Congress, you know how many jobs immigrants are creating, taxes paid, voting power, how many immigrants are in your neighborhood, around you, what industries are they supporting. These are really important facts to have handy as you talk about why this issue is important. So we really encourage you to get informed, go to our website, figure out how this impacts you. And if you are looking for something that you don't see, get in touch. Let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hanna. Thank you, Joy, for being here.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And again, visit COBRT.com. You can sign up for the event on Friday. Again, that's free. So be sure to sign up for that event. You can check out this podcast and more at COBRT.com/radio-podcast. Look for immigration modernization, and you can sign up for New American Economy, getting involved there. You can sign up for the Colorado Compact there as well. But thank you very much, ladies. It has been a pleasure. Have a wonderful day.